some comments will be a particular thing that the way you've worded it, or the way you've constructed the sentence or something might be wrong, or you might have used an incorrect reference or something. Those are probably easier if you've just got a mark along the side saying this is wrong, or this could be done in a different way. But in terms of overall comments, even a comment about whether you've got the law wrong, or whether you've missed out a particular element of the law or a particular way that the law is going, I think that can easily be done verbally. And of course you can just sit there and take notes as to what your lecturer is saying and put that in the relevant place. So if it's an overall comment, I think that's fine, but then if it's a more specific comment about a very particular part of your written work,
it needs to be in there.
Needs to be in there, I think, yeah.
I mean, I guess with some of them, if the voice comments are a way that lecturers can mark things more quickly and put more, more feedback into an assignment. Whereas if you've got a comment like at the end, you've just ticked boxes in the rubric and said good, well written or something at the end. I don't think that would be very beneficial to say recording well written. So if it gives lecturers more of an opportunity to, I guess, give more feedback on that, I think it's.
I think I'd be mindful of the use of that feature, mostly because law in itself, I find it's a very demanding degree, and there's often very high expectations put upon yourself and by your peers and by your lecturers as well to do a certain level of work and perform a certain way, which is understandable. But I think what I really like about reading my feedback is that I have time to reflect and that I have time to really digest it and see how it relates to what I've written and what I've put my effort into. Whereas if I was listening to someone saying, this was, badly written for X, Y, and Z, I think that would just be very traumatic, a very traumatic experience, and that I wouldn't want to look at my feedback for the fear of what could be said. Whereas if it's written, I can look at it, I can take time to digest and potentially go, okay, I want to talk to my lecturer to see how I can look through, rather than just hearing them tell me why I'm so bad at what I'm doing.
I think that's a very, very valuable comment. I think also the reason that I didn't do it till now, it's such a strange idea to tell a student something without a student being in front of you. I mean, students who write really bad essays are usually asking for a consultation so that they will do better next time. But then you can have just a decent conversation and explain what you think the students should do better.
It's not a dialogue. Why would that not be in the comment? What's interesting there is why that information would not be in the audio comment, because that can then circumvent having to have the second discussion. Yeah. So you can use your rubrics and whatnot and say, look, I think the main issue you're having is this, and this is something you can really easily improve by doing this, this, and this, and then you don't need that second conversation. And that would be interesting for me is whether that short circuits that delay in getting a positive feedback as well.
Right.
But I think that conversation is still really important, because if you want to have, if you've got that conversation, you don't really understand that what's gone wrong, or what really is the big thing that you need to change. Actually being able to say, so can you explain this part to me again? I didn't really understand what you were talking about at this time.
By the time you're off the track, having a little micro lecture about one way, non-dialogue sort of thing isn't probably as good as saying, well, I thought that's what you wanted, and how come it didn't work out? It often involves ambiguity and lack of clarity and misconceptions and that sort of stuff, which is known not to work well over email. It's a disastrous way to try and resolve that. I'm wondering whether this might be another thing. It could give an opportunity to have more detailed comment and maybe circumvent that, but as a communications... I'm a bit cautious. I mentioned the creepiness factor. I think I was also thinking of that it is a very personal thing. As a person, maybe you're doing it late at night, you're hoarse, you've done 1,000 marks, and you're going, oh, look, I'm so sick. Of wine. You're thinking, do I have to do this like a vodcast, like a broadcast? I've worked with people in the media industry, and they suddenly change their voice, and they're real professionals at producing it. Do you have to do that? Excuse me.
That happens when you are recording this comment. Your phone goes off.
Anyway, so I'm very interested in the concern that you flagged about whether it's a sort of a linear thing, and your opportunity just to read and reflect in a sort of a low emotional intensity sort of way is actually more useful. I found myself quite sort of reluctant to listen to more than a couple of minutes of voice or stuff like that, because I don't want to have to go through the linear thing. I like being able to skim through it and read bits and pieces out. It's a really helpful.
Sorry, because I have to leave about 5 minutes, so I was wondering if I could jump in and ask
Yes, please.
about classroom.
Yes, please.
So, just sorry, it's moving away from assessment. Something I'm particularly interested in is just how Moodle is being used for classroom or learning purposes. So, interesting that you mentioned that for a lot of teachers, Moodle is used as a bit like a Dropbox. So the course outlines there, you upload your assignment and whatnot. But thinking about teachers who have used it in other ways. What has your experience been? Good experiences or bad experiences, and what have you enjoyed using? So, is it the discussion forums? Is it class quizzes? Is it the wikis? What's working for you on Moodle when we're moving beyond that stage of being a kind of a dumping ground?
I think I've been in law classes where we had class forums, discussion forums, and it was mandatory to actually participate in forums and have responses every week. And I actually found that to be engaging because it actually forces you to do something. I think whenever there's something that forces students to do something, that's like it forces us to actually learn, right? But I was gonna mention the podcasting because I think you're getting a bit of a biased opinion from us because obviously we care enough about our degree to actually come here and sit here, right? We're not like a random sample of law students, so we actually care. But I think what you find out is with a lot of students, if you gave them an extra hurdle to go through for podcasts, video podcasts, whatever, they just won't bother.
They won't listen to it.
They won't listen to it. Even I've skipped podcasts because I just don't, it's too much and there's no incentive for me to do it, at least from my point of view. Of course, it helps me learn, but the more hurdles you give a student to go through something, to actually access something, the less likely to be able to do it or just be encouraged to do it. So I think that there's that danger.
What are you thinking the alternative is?
For instance, I think class handouts, for instance, are a far superior alternative to non-mandatory readings because, again, students won't bother to read it on the computer or to print it out themselves.
But they will in the classroom.
They will in the classroom because it's in their head and they're like, oh, I might as well read it. So
I'm in study time now. So
yeah.
Study. Okay.
But
so I mean, a handout with parts of the text on it, and then you get some time to read it. Do you mean that form? Or?
No, like just for instance, if there was a journal article that you wanted students to read, instead of posting in Moodle, just I know it might be environmentally unfriendly, but just print it out for students and give it to them at the end of the class. So you go home and read it. I think it'll be far more effective in actually getting students to read it than having them go on Moodle, at least from my point of view.
Yeah, but I mean, that you have to print out.
Yeah, it's very environmentally unfriendly. But
I have like 80 students now, print out 80.
Right.
Each week or twice a week.
I'm thinking cost.
Yeah. Just getting back to Paul's question because I think he has to go. But anyone else? What's worked for you and what hasn't worked for you in Moodle as far as like quizzes or forums or?
I think that the forums I've never used at all.
Wow.
Like, I've never had a lecturer who said we're going to be using the forums as part of our class discussion. Whereas there's some other things, I mean, not just in law subjects, but in some other subjects as well. Those short videos that are uploaded every week, 10 minutes. I mean, they're a bit long because they're on, don't worry. But like a short 5-minute, 10-minute explanation video about a particular element, and then that's talked about later on in class. I think that's something that helps to understand. Whereas if there's a short video that's on there that's, okay, this is something that's accessible, but we're going to assume you've watched it. We're not going to talk about it in class. We're just going to say, okay, that might be talked about in the exam. Make sure you watch it. And I disagree with the handouts thing. A lot of the time, I think the handouts, you kind of get them in class at the start and just have a quick skim over and then put it in the back of your book. And whereas I don't know if maybe it's just me, but at the start of the week, I'll go on Moodle and get all of the download things that I need to get off there and put them on my computer and say, this is what I need to read for this class.
Right.
I'll make notes on those things rather than a handout, which I think I've had some subjects where they've just all gone to the back of the book and I haven't looked at them again.
If there was a forum in that situation that you had to engage with, say a weekly forum or one forum that was focusing on the topic for that week, would you go in and discuss outside of the school?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think that yeah, what I've said with the video and then the discussion of the video in class, I think that's something that's I've found really engaging.
Okay.
I haven't really found the forum engaging, as you can probably tell.